surpassed eastern states in female voting rights. At this point, we're going to say that this is in the United States, not the Western world. That state laws allowed suffrage. It shows the different states and years. Eventually, everybody did. Why? You know, Utah wanted more women to gain political influence for the Mormons because they were being scrutinized for their polygamy and their compounds. So they wanted the suffrage to go through in Utah for political reasons, so they can take some of the women who were from the Mormon compounds and infiltrate them into the government to pass laws to make what they're doing as far as their polygamy colonies legally, or at least accepted, where they're not going to get busted for what they were doing. Middle class women's groups such as the WCTU, Pressed for Rights. I'm just trying to figure out where WCTU did
Women's Something Union, I bet.
Yeah. What is that?
Women's Something Union.
SCTU. Was
Women's Cooperative. Collective.
I didn't look that up, but I did a seminar one time just on the women's suffrage, and I knew what that meant from the last for the seminar I did probably about 7 or 8 months ago on the suffrage movement. And right now I'm just having a brain cramp on the WCTU, but I agree it's the Women's Something Trans Union or something Pressed for Rights. And then they had the Frontier Thesis.
What's that?
Which was
I should know this, I just took a class on it. What's his name that started it? Actually, it wasn't a bad thing. I don't know how. It was the thesis of the reason American exceptionalism was that because the frontier kept advancing, that America had more of an independent spirit, do for yourself type of, make your own life, because it was so rough all the time. Now, I don't know if that particular frontier thesis is going to be what you were going to say, but that's the one that, and I can't think of the guy's name that wrote the book on it. But
I would expect in context it was probably that women had such a strong role in the raising of frontier families that they deserved the vote.
Yeah.
And this just shows that by 1919, just about every state in the Union had taken on, state by state, took on the women's suffrage. And then we had women progressives that came out of the suffrage movement. Which was Abigail Scott Duniway, Oregon. She was an agrarian reformer of the 1870s to 1910. Divorce reforms, property rights, education reform, working class women's suffrage, and publisher Carol Church Nichols, who published a newspaper. Jeanette Rankin was the first woman elected to the U.S. Congress in 1917, and Nellie Ross in Wyoming, and Bertha Landry's of Texas, first female governors in 1925. So you can see right after the suffrage took place, immediately women became more active in a role in government, but they tended to be more involved with the unions and the progressives than they did with the Republican Party.
Isn't that weird, since it's the Republicans who really supported women's rights to vote?
They didn't, and it was the Republicans who helped the suffrage get passed. But the progressives and the unions took the credit for it. Just like when during Eisenhower thought that the African American community should have the right to vote, but he had a democratically controlled Congress
and that's
Senate.
right. And they said no.
And they said, well, we have a democratic president, then we're gonna pass it, but we're not gonna pass it under Republican president, because we want that to be,
To our credit.
more credit towards the Democratic Party for doing it. And Kennedy would have done it, because he succeeded Eisenhower, but he was gonna do it in a second term. But but while campaigning for a second term, we all know what happened. And so Johnson ended up getting the credit for allowing for the black people to vote. And this just is a recap of the women's suffrage movement that it fully passed in 1920s. Full voting rights, the same as men. And Susan B. Anthony was one of the biggest leaders of the cause. And for time-wise purposes tonight, because we got a late start, I'm gonna stop the seminar portion and then turn it over to Dan, because he's not only worked all day today, but he's here to talk to us. So I want to make sure that he gets equal time for, sound like a union guy now. But
Yay, do you mind if we take a quick?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Drink all that tea and then.
takes a while for it to cool down.
So collective bargaining